Sports shape lives, build communities, and drive billion-dollar industries. Yet their true impact often goes unnoticed.
From personal growth and well being to career potential, it's time to rethink what sports can do. This is the Why Not Sports podcast. All right, welcome to the Why Not Sports podcast, a podcast where we dive into the business and community side of sports. Today, we are honored to welcome Dr. Bowen Loftin.
Dr. Loftin is a distinguished academic leader, former university president, and expert in higher education governance, strategic planning, and athletics administration. He earned a BS in physics from Texas A&M and a PhD from physics from Rice. His early career focused on artificial intelligence and virtual reality, earning recognition such as the NASA Public Service Medal and the NASA Space Act Award, and the IEEE Virtual Reality Conference Career Award. In 2010, Dr. Loftin became the 24th president of Texas A&M, leading the institution through its move to the Southeastern Conference, a decision that reshaped its athletic and financial future. He later chronicled the experience in his memoir, The 100-Year Decision, Texas A&M and the SEC. Beyond his university leadership roles, Dr. Loftin remains a thought leader on higher education, crisis management, and the business of college sports as the founder of the Follow the Money podcast, offering insights into the evolving financial landscape of collegiate athletics.
Dr. Loftin, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here with you guys. We've been busy this week. It's my third podcast this week to deal with, so it's been a busier than usual time for me.
Oh yeah, it's a busy season right now, especially here at Texas A&M. And Dr. Loftin, the first question that we love to ask is, what's your sports story?
Well, there are probably several, but I'm not a natural athlete. That's number one. Okay, my wife is. I am not. I played sports back in public school. My first episode was really in Little League. I played baseball for a while and enjoyed that. Oddly, my Little League coach is still alive. He's in his middle 90s now and is the retired senior pastor of First Presbyterian Bryan, Texas.
Oh,
So Reverend Klett's still around, and I tell people he ruined me. When I started playing Little League, he discovered that I could bat equally well left and right-handed. Now, I'm naturally a right-handed person, okay?
Uh-huh.
And you're too young to know this, but back when I was very young, it was not popular to be left-handed.
Yeah.
And so mothers would actually slap their kids' hands if they used their left hand and things like that. So because of that, Klett saw me bat well left-handed, and he realized I would almost always face a right-handed batter. And that I'm a rather pitcher, and that pitcher would rarely see a left-handed batter. So I had an advantage by batting left-handed. After a year, I couldn't go back to right-handed batting. So to this day, I'm right-handed every way except I can't swing a golf club or a baseball bat right-handed. I'm left-handed in that regard. That's his fault. That's one of my stories right there. Another quick story is this: I tried out for basketball, and the coach called me in and said, "Loftin, you're no good at basketball, but I need a team statistician. Can you keep book for me?" And so I kept the book. We had no computers. This is 1960s, okay? We had no computers, so we had a book. And I went to all the games, traveled with the team, and recorded all of their stuff, all their field goals, all of their three-pointers, which didn't exist in those days, by the way. All of their free throws and everything were done by me, and I did the stats from my coach. But I was part of the team in a way, but I wasn't an athlete on the team. My sports were baseball and a little football.
Gotcha.
Yes. So kind of being around sports your whole life, what have you seen to be kind of some of the benefits outside of what people traditionally see?
Well, there's nothing better probably than college sports to show people the value of teamwork. Uh, in real life, you work together. I mean, in school, it's not necessarily beneficial. You may be called a cheater if you try to work together. But even in school, I think there are opportunities to do teamwork together. You two clearly are a team. So that's something you learn intrinsically in sports. You really have to play a sport and learn that you depend on your other teammates a lot. Now, there are some sports where it's loose. My son was a natural athlete, took care of his mother. He played football, soccer before that. He played baseball, his team sports, but he also wrestled. And he was a state champion wrestler in high school. And he did, that was not really a team sport. You get team scores, but I mean, he really I did this individually. So, but so many sports are team sports, and you learn things there you can't learn easily any other way, that you must depend on other people and hold them accountable. And that lesson is something you can carry into your lives and use throughout your entire professional careers and your personal lives too, for that matter.
So how did you specifically apply those lessons when you kind of made the transition into university leadership, and what did that kind of decision entail?
Well, no president or chancellor runs a campus by themselves. It's just, you can't do it. Okay. And A&M was already big when I became president. We crossed 50,000 students while I was president. We're now at 75 or so. Missouri reached about 35,000, its high mark when I was chancellor there. So you can't run it by yourself. You have a group of people you work with, and there are hundreds literally you work with. You may call it a cabinet. You have your vice presidents, those who report to you directly. And we met regularly. And those were people I counted on a lot. I also counted on my students. One of the things I focused on as a campus leader was why I was there and why the university was there. And the reason was you. I mean, the reason were the students. That is easily lost. And so many campus leaders, I think, forget why the campus is there. They forget why they're there and don't listen to the students. So I'm one of the few presidents who used social media extensively to communicate with students both ways. So every student who followed me could get to me without anybody being between us. No secretary, no staff person. They could directly send me a direct message. I use Twitter primarily, X these days, as president here at A&M. I used Facebook before that. I use Instagram and other things these days, a little bit of Threads. I don't use much TikTok or Snap, but I do use social media still. But I use social media every single day. And I would devote 1 to 2 hours a day to answering student direct messages to me. I also followed about 1,000 students who were a cross section of the institution, freshmen, the grad students, every major, male, female, you name it, every demographic dimension I could find. I tried to find a student or two to put in that dimension. And so that gave me a view. I looked at the timeline every day. I could see the campus through their eyes, and I could tell what made them happy, what made them sad. I was well aware every day what was going on campus through their eyes. And so I'd go into a meeting with my staff and I'd say, "Do you understand we got this problem over here? How do you know that?" I would say, "I know everything on this campus." And the secret was you. I mean, I use the students as my eyes and ears, and I listen to them every single day. When I leave the office every day, I would not stay in the office all day if I was on campus. I would get out. I'd spend time in Coldus, the MSC. I'd spend time over on the Academic Plaza, just talking to students. I go to Sabisa or Duncan Dining Hall, sit down and eat with people. I just spent usually a couple hours a day in person with students, and probably an hour to two a day via social media with students. That was my way of keeping up with them, basically. So back to your original question here, the teamwork is important because you can't do it by yourself, but you have to listen.
Yeah.
And I chose to listen not just to my team, my official team, my staff. I listened to my students as well. And that started in Galveston when I ran that campus there. It continued here and also in Missouri.
Kind of something that we're really curious about here is, I mean, you yourself were kind of a visionary. You were ahead of their time, ahead of people's time when we were referencing, the movement to the SEC. And so that was a major moment in college athletics, right? So what were the biggest factors in making that decision? And kind of walk me through, like, kind of behind the curtain on that one, right? What did you think
Well,
have
there's a
been the
book
long-term
about it. So I
difference?
wrote a book about it, out of print now, but there's a book out there. It still has copies running around that gives you a few hundred pages discussing everything that happened. So I really wanted to nail down all the things that happened so mythology would not take the place of reality, in fact. But a couple of things are necessary to understand. First of all,
Mhm.
we should be thankful to our friends in Austin for this happening. This all began uh, when I began hearing rumors. This is in late 2009, that our friends at UT Austin were in conversation with, at that time, the Pac-10, the West Coast Conference, which doesn't much exist anymore. But we were talking. They were talking about not only them joining the Pac, but taking us with them. And they had never ever raised that point with us. So I found myself in a meeting with their president at that time. A guy named Bill Powers in Austin in his office. We had a meeting about some of the stuff, and so when we got done, I said, "I want to talk to you privately." And everybody else left the office except the two of us. I said, "Bill, I hear through the grapevine that you are in conversation with the Pac-10 about your joining and also taking Texas A&M with you to that conference." He came over to me, put his hand on my shoulder, looked me in the eye, and said, "I can't talk about that now, but don't worry, we'll take care of you." That was a pretty tough moment not to slug the guy. I'm not a violent person, but I wanted to hit him because I was so angry. The condescension that he displayed. I think he meant this as something comforting. He really did not understand our point of view at all, that he would take care of us. That just made me very angry. I didn't yell back at him. I wanted to. I didn't do it. I didn't do anything violent whatsoever. I just left the office. About a month later, he was in my office in College Station and told me exactly the same thing. So I went ahead and communicated with the Board of Regents of the A&M system, what I had heard from him and what I had heard through the conversations going on around the country. And they were concerned. And they said, "We need options. So find us options." That was my directive from them. My AD at the time was a man named Bill Byrne. Bill's son was actually the AD at Mississippi State at the time. And so I called Bill. I said, get your son to give you the cell phone number for Mike Slive, the commissioner of the SEC. And so I got that back in a few minutes, and I called Mike just cold. And he was very gracious. He was happy I called him. He said, "I'm really interested in Texas A&M. Let's get together." And so he flew secretly to Hooks Field, north of Houston. I drove over with a lawyer and met him in the FBO conference room there, and we spent a few hours together. And he had done a really good job already piecing together information about how A&M might fit within the Southeastern Conference. That was our first face-to-face meeting. This little side story, he told me something very interesting. He said, "I've been to Kyle Field." I said, "Really? Been to Kyle Field? I'm surprised about that." He said, "Yeah, I was invited there by the guy's name. It's not important to you, but Arno Krebs is the guy who invited him." Arno is an Aggie, my neighbor. He worked at a large law firm in Houston. When we had a difficult situation with the NCAA during the time when Jackie Sherrill was our head football coach and AD, we were charged with infractions by the NCAA. And none of our internal lawyers knew much about sports law. They contacted this big firm in Houston who also didn't have anybody in-house. And they hired a sports lawyer, a guy named Mike Slive, who later became the commissioner of the SEC. And so Mike really solved our problem. A&M would have become the first death penalty issued by the NCAA had it walked down the pathway it was going to go down. And I credit Mike Slive with solving that problem and getting us, we were punished, but the punishment stopped short of being the death penalty, which SMU got. And it was so devastating to them, it never was given again. And now SMU has finally risen from the ashes and become a very, very good athletic program and very successful program and moved to the ACC. So this is a long story, but I want you to understand that this is how this all worked. I met this guy. Yeah. We clicked right away. He was very, very interested in Texas A&M. And obviously money was a lot of the problem there. He saw the Texas market was not part of the SEC footprint. By getting A&M into the SEC, it became part of the footprint. And 22 million households with TVs is not a small thing.
Absolutely.
And that was a big deal. The Big 12, the whole story there, I have chapters about that in my book.
Yeah.
We could spend many hours talking about the Big 12 and its problems at that time in history. But again, the SEC was welcoming, and we went through a 2-year process. This all began in 2010, and we did not get formally into the SEC until over 2 years later, well, a year and a half later in 2010 anyway, 2011. And so it was a lengthy process to go through, well worth it in my opinion. I spent so many hours working with this problem. It wasn't just me. I had a great team working with me. A couple of regents were very helpful. Jim Wilson, especially, who's still around, he lives here in this town now, was very helpful to me. Richard Box was chairman of the board during part of this time. Jim Swertner, these are all regents who were very supportive of us joining the SEC, and I owe them a great deal of gratitude for their help and support.
And now with kind of over 10 years to reflect back on that decision, what is something that was kind of unexpected as a result of it? This can either be like an unexpected benefit, an unexpected kind of detriment to it.
Well, benefit, the money's good. More than we'd even hoped at the beginning there. But other things were interesting. As we got further into the process of joining the SEC, you discover they have many rules. And some of those rules were very, very different than what we had lived with the Big 12. And before that, the Southwest Conference. For example, you cannot come into an SEC game and leave and then come back in again. That was never a problem in the previous conference affiliations. And so, for example, this weekend we have our first SEC softball games. Florida's here this weekend. I like baseball and softball both. I used to go back and forth.
Yeah.
I can't do that anymore. They don't allow students to sit behind the opposing bench. That's precisely where the Aggie band sat before we joined the SEC.
That's
We
right.
had to move the Aggie band. I did win a couple of things. They prohibited anybody being on the field who didn't have official capacity. Well, you may or may not remember this, but when we have a win, what happens? The freshmen and the core cadets rush the field and chase the yell leaders, capture them, and take them to the fish pond to throw them in. Well, that's prohibited by SEC rules in general, but I got a waiver on that one anyway. The boot line was also prohibited by SEC rules. I got a waiver on that one, but I lost the other ones. So you win some, you lose some, but there were a lot of rules that I just didn't understand well before we got far into the process. And we had a lot of conversation and negotiations about those rules. That's just some of the things you get into you don't really expect.
Yeah, and kind of digging into that evolution as well, kind of what is something that university presidents have to deal with in regards to athletics that was kind of a big problem when you were in your position compared to now?
Well, not every president is that interested in athletics. That's something to be aware of. You should be. My predecessor, actually one before that, when Robert Gates was president here for a time, and he became defense secretary. He had been, prior to becoming here, the CIA director, things like that. Very well-known person, very smart guy, brilliant guy in so many ways. Bob really wasn't that interested in sports, but he understood how important they were in some respects. So he made a fundamental change at A&M, which I found fascinating. In most schools, you go around, you find there is a compliance office. But that office is the side of athletics and reports to the AD. Bob inherited that, but realized that compliance or failure to comply could become a major issue for the university. So he moved the compliance director from being inside of the athletic department and reporting to the AD to reporting to him directly. And I inherited that. David Batson was the guy at the time. David is now the compliance head for the SEC overall. But he became a frequent visitor to my office, and we spent a lot of time together. His wife played softball here, and so athlete herself. And so we're still great friends, the two of them and myself. But my point is that Bob made that decision, which was a very wise decision. When I got to Missouri, that it was the other way. The AD was the boss of the compliance person. I met with her. Uh, Very, very lengthy meeting with her about whether I should move her under me. She asked me not to, but promised me she would always let me know if there were any issues that her boss told her not to communicate with me, and that should be communicated to me. And as far as I know, she was very honest about that. So Mary Austin was her name, and she did a good job keeping me up to date. We met as much as I met with David Batson weekly, at least, to talk about all of the various compliance issues we have to deal with. You don't see it, guys, as students typically, but compliance is a pretty big deal. We had a player during my time. His name was Johnny Manziel. You may have heard of him.
Right.
Johnny was a specifically interesting person to work with. I have a lot of respect for him in so many ways, but I had to have a compliance person actually follow him for a while to make sure that things didn't happen that were improper. And we did have one penalty against us during his time here. That was an NCAA imposition of a penalty on us. It was a pretty minor penalty, but that resulted from some compliance issues that arose during his time. But you do the best you can here. But compliance is something that's important. Bob understood that. But as far as I know, he only went to one sport. He went to football, and because he kind of had to. Oddly, his wife and my wife went to many sports together. They both like athletics, and they went to a lot of sports together. But Mr. Gates was not somebody who really, I think, had a very deep love of sports. He knew he had to deal with it, and he made sure we did it the right way. But it wasn't his thing exactly. I love sports myself. I love watching sports. I'm not, again, a good athlete, but I liked my time playing it way back when, many, many years ago. But I just enjoy going and watching our players perform. It's a great thing to see.
It's like you've had a really impressive resume. You've had a lot of really impressive positions. You know, which ones are you necessarily like most proud of out of all the impressive roles that you've had?
Well, I mean, you make every job you have the most important thing professionally for you at the time. I mean, that's something you guys are learning yourselves
Yeah,
right now. You
absolutely.
can't do a job halfway. So I always put everything I had into the jobs I had. But of the jobs I've had, I mean, I cherish the jobs I had in Galveston and here in College Station because it threw me in with you guys. I mean, in Galveston, it's a small campus. When I was there, we had about 1,600 students and about 350 to 400 faculty and staff. And I walked the campus every day. I knew everybody by name, even every student by name. And so I could walk the campus every day, and I call it managed by wandering. It
Yeah.
was very effective. I just could not do that here because of the size, physical size and scope of the campus in College Station. But I did get out of the office, as I told you earlier, every day
Yeah.
and talk to students. So again, you put everything you have into the job. When I was president of Texas A&M, I worked about 15 hours a day. I got up at 4 in the morning, and I went to bed about 11 to 11:30 at night, and that was
Wow.
every day. I took off Sunday morning to go to church, and that was about it. Everything
Dang.
else was focused on the university, and it was about the same in Columbia, Missouri, at the University of Missouri. So these jobs are extraordinarily demanding. There is never enough time to do everything you got to do. And you must make a lot of decisions about what's the most important thing to do right now and go do that and not get distracted by the thousands of other things you have yelling at you all the time to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so kind of tying back to the evolving landscape of collegiate sports and the business, kind of within that, you mentioned that you have a very big importance on building relationships with students and understanding kind of how different policies are impacting them. How have you seen the policies of an increase in NIL change the student athletes' role as students and athletes, kind of balancing that obligation as well?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it, and I'll try to explain that a bit. Oddly, the very first podcast for College Sports Follow the Money occurred almost exactly at the same time Judge Claudia Wilkin issued her ruling on NIL. So that wasn't planned to just happen that way. She has actually ruled in 85% of the cases against the NCAA of major consequence.
Oh, wow.
She's a federal judge in Northern District of California. Did her undergraduate degree at Stanford and is a Berkeley Law graduate. And as far as I can find out, never played a sport in her life. Yet she has had the most profound impact of any person in history
Wow.
on college sports in this country. And so that's interesting to me. I don't think she's necessarily, biased. I just think she doesn't understand sometimes the consequences of the decisions she has made. Now, having said that, I do think that there was a total disservice done to student athletes as universities monetized them and kept the money for themselves. I fully understand that. And I think that riding that ship was necessary. How we've done it, I can argue with how we've done it. But I think there was a disservice done to our wonderful student athletes. And that's something that I'm glad we've tried to correct. I just don't know we've done it as well as we could have. But having said all that, what I would do is I had readers that read names of each student. I would tell them, let's mark every student who's a student athlete. And when they get up there, even though our cadence is 17 people per minute, that was our cadence of getting people through.
Wow.
I said, take extra time with once you read the athlete's name, give me a few more seconds because I want to tell them something. So I would tell every student athlete, thank you for working 2 full-time jobs at A&M. You were a successful student. That's a full-time job. You guys know that. And you were
sure.
also a successful athlete. That's a full-time job. You did 2 full-time jobs here. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to thank you for that. So that's what I would communicate to those student athletes as they walked across the stage and interacted with me to get their diploma, move on. So lots of things happen at graduation you would never see as a student. I had a proposal one time. So I was just almost about done with one ceremony. It was the Ag College. And this lady is out there in front of me getting her diploma. And this guy bursts out of the student section with no robe on, runs up there on the stage.
Oh my God.
Kneels in front of me, a box, rotates to her and says, will you marry me? And she couldn't even speak. She was so stunned. So she finally nodded her head, yes. He picks her up, carries her off stage into the hands of my security detail. He was trespassing, so he shouldn't have been there, but he was. We didn't punish him anyway, but I still communicate with her. She has 2 children now. She married him. They have 2 children, and we still interact.
Yeah, my follow-up question was gonna be, what do you miss most about, being a president? I mean, I guess you're still in the community, you're very involved,
Well,
but
I miss you guys. I do have a way to make up for it. I tend to have coffee twice a week on the average with a student who is usually a junior or senior. They are interested in life after A&M. They know I know lots of Aggies. They want me to connect them to the Aggie network and help them with their process of getting a position after A&M's graduation. They may want to go to grad school, a professional school, and they want a recommendation from me. And my rule is very simple: I will not do that unless I know you.
right,
So
of
we need
course.
to sit down together for an hour or 2 over a cup of coffee, and let's talk about you.
Yeah,
And let me know where you come from and what you want to do with your life. And then I can say honestly to a person I recommend them to, I know this person, I know this student, and they're worthy of your attention. And so that's about twice a week. I speak to student organizations once every month or 2. I have professors who ask me to come by and do a class for them occasionally. So my beauty is this: I get a chance to talk to you guys,
yeah.
either collectively or one-on-one, fairly often. Not as much as when I was president, but I do keep that up, and that's my bliss right there, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially necessary in a time where it feels like face-to-face connections and kind of developing those personal relationships are kind of fading away. So definitely good to kind of emphasize that as much as possible. In
Very
addition
much so.
to that, do you have any other kind of last pieces of advice as we kind of wind down the podcast for aspiring professionals, student athletes who are navigating the difficult times? And yeah.
Well, student athletes today are a little bit apart. I know that many of them are able to interact with you. I mean, you collectively as students here, it's a little tough. The demands of the position, the job of being an athlete here are large. And the demands of being a student. You guys are in May school. It ain't easy, guys. I know that. Okay, it's hard work, and it takes hours of your time. But to the extent possible, every student here should try to be engaged in a service organization. And we've gotten so big, that's almost impossible now for everybody to be able to do. And that's a
Right.
shame. It
Yeah.
really is. I think you can learn a lot in a classroom, a laboratory, even an internship could teach you a whole lot about professional life, but you've never really experienced the most difficult challenge of all till you try to manage someone in a volunteer position.
Yeah.
People who join organizations aren't being paid, they're volunteers, okay? They can walk. And how do you direct them? You have no power other than your own persuasive ability and your own leadership example. And that's what you ought to learn here at A&M. A&M has been famous for this from the inception. And I encourage every student to do that if at all possible. Work as hard as you can to get into an organization that allows you to interact with volunteers doing something which is absolutely impactful on the lives of others. If you can do that while you're here, even for 1 year, that's something you'll carry with you beyond
Yeah.
A&M and be able to apply it to your professional and personal life going forward. That's my best
Yeah.
advice to anybody.
No, and and you're right. It is probably the most rewarding thing we can do. Um, just because you to get to see your impact come to fruition, it's a really special thing. And Dr. Lofton, kind of like the last thing we love to do with our guests is give them the opportunity to send goodwill out to anybody that they want to give a shout out to or someone they appreciate. So, who would you
Oh,
like
yeah,
to
I've
send
already
some
mentioned a
goodwill
few
to?
names to you guys. John Bishop was on a minute ago. John's a good friend and an
Yeah.
excellent person for you to talk to. I hope you got his resume a little bit. He went to Durham. He then worked for the NBA for a number of years, and now
Yeah.
he is a major executive with Playfly. And I think he carries with him a lot of Aggieness. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
that's
No,
a very
definitely.
good thing. But again, I mentioned some regents. Again, Jim Wilson, great friend, just recently got named a distinguished alumnus of A&M. Jim Schwertner, not an Aggie, but his daughter is. His father was. Dear friend of mine, Richard Box, Aggie dentist, just a great guy. These are people that I worked with as regents when I was the president. Their support, their love, their advice meant huge things to me.
Yeah.
And I hope that they will be able to pick up on that if they listen to this podcast at all. There are thousands of others I could name. I know lots of people, guys, and it
Yeah.
would be impossible in this podcast. I'll just mention these people because they're so special to me. My wife, Karen, has been my partner for 53 years. So
Oh,
that's a pretty
congratulations.
long time. And we have 2 children and 7 grandchildren. They live in Alaska and in Colorado, so we don't see them that often, unfortunately. But it gives you a sense that family is important too. I'm sure you guys
Yeah.
cherish your families as well, and spending time with them is an important part of your maturation as well. So never forget to do that.
Dr. Lofton, thank you so much for coming on. Our last thing that we want to do is kind of provide you with the opportunity to kind of share how people can get connected with you or kind of get involved and listen to your work, specifically the Follow the Money podcast or maybe any other kind of publications that you've been working on.
Yeah, the Follow the Money podcast is we try to do it every other week. It's hard. There's no money involved, so we don't have a lot of drivers to make it happen. We've done 73 episodes since middle of 2021. The last one involved your recent guest, John Bishop, here. I think it's a good podcast. Hope you listen to it. I've had several feedback directions already. I'm pretty easy to find. I have 4 email addresses. I have I don't have a landline anymore. I have a mobile phone. But maybe the easiest way for, like you did, I'm on several platforms of social media. So find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on X, on Threads, and you can easily send me a message there and connect us if you have a particular purpose. That's probably the easiest way for almost anybody to find me if they spend a couple of minutes on one of these social media platforms. And I can't always do it immediately. I took a few days to get back to you guys, but I'll get back to you, and we can certainly link up if it's appropriate for us to do so. If you're an Aggie student, I'm happy to spend my time talking to you, learning about you, giving you what advice I can give you if it means anything, and more importantly, making sure you're aware of the value of this extraordinary thing we have access to called the Aggie Network.
Yeah.
You will use that, I'm sure, gentlemen, in your world. I use it every day.
We're using it right now. Absolutely.
Exactly.
I mean, we already got a little, why not sports kind of community going with yourself, John Bishop,
Dr. Parrish.
yeah, Christy. I mean, just the level of willingness to help and give us some tremendous insights has been unwavering. So,
Well, we didn't talk about all the details here, but sports is a part of my life. I don't play it, but my wife and I enjoy it a great deal. We have tickets to almost everything. Man, I enjoy going there and celebrating with my friends our wins and commiserating on our occasional losses, although it's been a little tough lately with baseball, but we'll get there.
yeah, absolutely. We will. No, Dr. Loftin, thank you for joining the show. Really appreciate you.
Guys, thanks and give them.